Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Tip of the Spear. And as always, we're trying to bring you the best voices out there around the world to give us insight on what's happening from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. And we have an exciting guest today, Josh Peck. He is a biblical researcher, author, and hosts a show that you can watch on YouTube and on his website. He writes mainly about prophecy and, get this, quantum physics. So very interesting perspective, and that's why I'm excited to bring him to you guys today. He is also the host of a show called The Sharpening Report, and the show features interviews from exciting guests who are experts in their fields, and he tackles biblical prophecy and science, which is interesting, the supernatural, obviously, current events, politics, and all kinds of topics, including those topics on the fringe that you wouldn't necessarily hear in most venues. Several websites I found. Ministudyministry.com is one of the websites. Another website called Daily Renegade is one of his platforms that he uses, and he has the Sharpening Report on that. And a little bit about him on YouTube. You can find him at Josh Peck Disclosure, and he has all those platforms available to you. If you're out there searching, that's where you look for. So I want to welcome to the show Josh. Josh, thank you for joining us, man. Great to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be on. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be able to do this.
Yeah, amen, amen. We've had some scheduling issues, but we finally got them all worked out, and we got you on the show. And what I wanted to do, Josh, is introduce you to a lot of our audience that may not know you, get familiar with your work. Can you give us some background, like where are you coming from? And you come a specific angle of prophecy and physics, so kind of explain all of that.
Sure. Well, ever since I was a kid, I was a sci-fi nerd. So I've always had a real interest in science. And one of the biggest questions I had when I was a kid is like, not only how does science fit in with the Bible, or does it at all, but beyond that, what about some of these science fiction elements that were on all these television shows and movies I was watching? Like, what about aliens? That was a big one for me.
Yeah.
How do aliens fit into the Bible, or does it at all? And I remember I would go to my pastor. I was brought up Baptist, and so I remember being really young, and I would go up to my pastor and ask about it. And the answer that I would get is, well, Josh, all of that's demonic. And I would ask, okay, well, how do we know that? Like, where in the Bible does it tell us that? And he would say, he would just say, well, you just got to take it on faith. And for my mind, at the time, even at such a young age, that just wasn't a good enough answer. And I'm not saying anything bad about that church or that pastor. They're the ones that introduced me to Jesus. So
I got it. Yeah.
But at the time, what would have been more of a satisfying answer for me would be, well, Josh, I actually don't know. I believe it's probably demonic. I don't know that I could fully defend that. So, why don't I take some time, or we can both take some time and like look into it and just see.
Yeah.
I would have loved that as an answer. Well, what ended up happening, just over the course of years of that, when I was 12 years old, my mom and I moved, and my mom, and I think, she was a Christian too, but I think she just didn't want to deal with going to church anymore, because she kind of put it on me. She was like, Josh, we're in a new town. If you don't really want to go and find a new church and you just want to stay at home on Sundays, that'd be okay. It's up to you. So of course, 12-year-old me, I'm thinking, okay, great. Yeah, I'll sleep in on Sundays. So,
right.
And that unfortunately, so I still had like all of these questions in mind. And now I wasn't going to church. I was becoming a teenager now and getting into all sorts of stuff that comes with that.
Right.
And still having those questions and not really knowing any other Christians that would be willing to talk about it. I got into New Age a lot because.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
a lot of my friends. Some of my friends were in New Age, so I had a lot of influence, and I didn't have really the. I didn't really have the foundation of understanding to know that New Age is completely incompatible with Christianity.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time. And by the way that New Agers talk, you would think that they go hand in hand.
Huh.
They use a lot of biblical terminology. They know how to make themselves sound very Christian. And I was really susceptible to that, because now here were some people that were actually listening to me, my questions. I had a few dark spiritual experiences when I was younger too, so they were hearing me out on that and not just brushing it off and saying it was just, you know, dreams or something. And so for a while, I got really, really heavily into New Age stuff.
Okay.
Until a time the satanic attacks just got so bad, I had to relinquish all that, and I finally realized, like, I don't know what I'm messing with. This is completely different than I thought it was. So for the first time, really, in my adult life, I completely rededicated my life to Christ. I got rid of all my New Age stuff.
Good.
But I still had these questions. So I was asking the Lord, like, Lord, I need help. Where do I go? And it wasn't too long after that, maybe a day or two after that, I was flipping through TiVo. Remember how?
Yeah, I do.
Dating myself. This is a while ago, but I was flipping through that, and this show came up called "It's Supernatural" with Sid Roth, which I had never heard of before. And I'm not denouncing it or endorsing it. I'm just saying, at the time, just coming out of New Age, that was attractive to me, and so I watched an episode of it, and he had this guest on with this crazy name, and I never heard of him before, L.A. Marzulli. And in the show, he was talking about how aliens fit into the Bible through Genesis 6, and probably most of your audience already knows about that connection, but just in case they don't, in Genesis 6, it talks about the sons of God, which are fallen angels, came down and mated with human women and created these giants, the Nephilim. And L.A. was talking about how similar that is to what abductees report about this alien hybridization program and all that.
Right.
He connected the two, and it clicked. I had never heard the word Nephilim before. Now, I had never even really got into much of the Old Testament at this time, and so I was hooked. And so I recorded the show when my wife Christina, we had just gotten married at this point. We hadn't been married for very long. When she got home, I said, you need to sit down and watch this with me. So we watched it together, and then we started doing we started praying together. We started doing Bible studies together. We ordered some of LA's DVDs, which led us to Gary Stearman and Tom Horn and people like that. And that really opened the door to this whole group of people, group of Christians that I didn't know even existed, that are willing to talk about these things, not tell you you're crazy, not tell you you're just chasing after demons if you wonder what aliens are, you know, none of that, but actually are open, but still like rooted in the word and are really careful. So it's not like, you know, new agey kind of stuff where they'll accept almost anything except the actual biblical truth. So that really inspired me. Specifically LA, because that was my first entrance into this whole thing. And what I realized after learning this, it's like I at the time I was in my late 20s, and I was thinking, if I'm at this age, there are so many other Christians that don't know about this stuff. I want to help. I want to do ministry. I want to do books. I want to do DVDs. I want to speak at conferences. But I didn't really know where to start. I had never written a book before. I had never done any of this before, but it was just like, it was something awakened in me. And I just knew this was the path. I knew it. And I knew that God would sort out all the details later. So I took a chance, tried to write my very first book, which I had no idea how to write a book. So it wasn't very good, but it was a good start. In promoting that, I got to know a couple of, you know, smaller podcasts and stuff. And just over time, that kind of led to where I am now. But like where the science comes in is, after that first book was just really general. It was super, just really general. Just what are the Nephilim? Like real basic for somebody who had never heard of it before. And I was actually surprised to find out there really wasn't a very big audience for that. It's either people who didn't know and didn't care, or it was people who already knew the basics and they wanted more. Yeah. So by this point, I was watching a lot of stuff by like Chuck Missler and people like that, and I had always had this really deep interest in science, and the weirder it is, the more interesting it is to me. So of course that got me into quantum physics, and the connection there was made by Chuck Missler for me. So I was watching a bunch of his stuff, and but at the same time, I was also digging into a lot of science books just on my own. At the time, I have a rare bone disease called Trevor's disease, and I've had a hip replacement now, so I can move and get around. But at the time, I was basically bedridden. It was really hard for me to do anything. So I had a lot, and I was on disability, so I had a lot of time to just read and learn. And I was really interested in quantum physics. So I just bought a bunch of books on that and read it. And I started to realize, you know, it's with quantum physics, it's not that it's so complicated of a science that nobody can understand it. The problem is how it's explained, because quantum physicists are kind of seen as like the top of like how smart you can possibly be, you know?
Right.
And a lot of times that'll get to their head, and it kind of dictates how they explain things and how they talk. And they'll use this really complicated language. And after a while, I realized, you know, it's more like just decoding a language or translating a language than it is, because the bigger concepts are actually kind of easy to understand, as long as we have to unlearn some things that we were taught in like high school science and stuff. But we also have to just know what they're talking about when they use these really long terms. And, you know, nobody wants to read a book and then also have to read the dictionary at the same time.
Right.
So I thought, you know, and Chuck Missler is pretty good at doing that too. He was able to make it relatable for the most part for a lot of people, myself included. So I thought, well, man, that would be a really good book idea. So my first major release that I actually like and think came out well was Quantum Creation. I self-published that. It's still available today. That was like really my breakout thing. At that time, Dr. Michael Lake had gotten in touch with me because he had somehow gotten a hold of my books and he wanted me on his show. So he got to know me and everything. And then after we talked and did the show, and he said, you know, I really want to get these books to Tom Horn. He's starting this new show called Skywatch TV. It's a whole brand new thing. And I really, really think that he would be interested in this. Could you send me a couple of copies to give him? And I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, because at the time I'd never met Tom. I never met hardly any of these people. Yeah. And, you know, Tom was like one of my heroes, like LA. So I was like, yeah, of course. And so I did. He gave the books to Tom. Tom, bless his heart, he took a chance on me. He had me out to do an interview for one of the very first episodes of Skywatch TV. I think the first 3 episodes were Michael Lake, Sharon Gilbert, and myself.
Wow.
This was so long ago that Gary Stearman was hosting it at first. This was actually this was before Prophecy Watchers had fully launched, I believe.
Okay. And
so I did that. I got to know everybody. Apparently made a good first impression, because once I got back home after like a week or two, I got an email from Tom offering me a job at Skywatch, myself and my wife.
Wow.
And we were like destitute, broke. Like, we were so poor. We were living in a little trailer, just me, her, and our daughter, our first kid. Like, the suit that I wore for that interview, I got from Goodwill because I just couldn't afford anything else. And so this was like a huge opportunity. So of course I took it, and I'm thinking that this is what that calling is like. So I worked at Skywatch for 7 years. And when I look back on that, I consider that like boot camp for me.
Gotcha.
Tom Horn really mentored me. I mean, he like, I spent so much time with him, and it was just, you know, he'll be sorely missed. He passed away a year or two ago, but I really needed that training and everything. Since then, I've branched out a little bit more, and now I'm working at Prophecy Watchers, which is great, perfect fit for me, and it's going beautifully. I have several other books out now, and working on a DVD set and some other things, a documentary. I've done a couple other movies, so that's kind of how it all happened in a nutshell. Kind of a long answer, but just for background on me, there you go.
No, that's great, man. It's amazing how God takes us on these different paths, but it all coalesces and comes together. And you know, I want you to kind of help our audience. So, you know, there's always this divide in between science and faith, and that they're enemies of themselves, but they're really not. Can you help us understand, when you wrote a book about quantum physics and the Bible, what was your point of what you were trying to show about that?
Yeah, this was one of the main things that I learned that was so cool. So all the time when it seems like religion and science don't mesh together, it's not because of objective observable facts, it's because of subjective interpretations. So for example, a scientist, one that I actually think can explain things really well. He's totally atheistic, but his name's Sean Carroll, and he did a debate with William Lane Craig, which is a really good debate. But it's one of those you got to listen, because both of them speak really technically sometimes. Yeah. And but in there, this was kind of a aha moment for me. because in there is a science called quantum field theory. It's the most accurate science that we have.
Okay.
And he was talking about that, and Sean Carroll said, we know that there is no afterlife because there's no quantum field to take the energy of somebody anywhere. There's no quantum field to take that. And so here we have an observable, very, very well tested objective fact, quantum field theory. It's absolutely true. But on top of that, what Sean Carroll did was he laid over his own interpretation of what it means. So gotcha. That's the issue. So while he says there's no quantum field, well, we don't even know if we've discovered all quantum fields. And spiritual reality is something completely different than physical reality. Quantum fields only have to do with physical reality, and a quantum field is just like, the gravitational field. It's fields that like where particles basically pop into existence. It only describes physical reality. It has nothing to say about spiritual. That's a totally separate thing. But to somebody who wouldn't know, to just a casual observer of that debate, they might think, oh, quantum field theory, the most accurate science we have, says that there can't be an afterlife. Well, I guess the Bible's out then. So it's really observation versus interpretation. And so in Quantum Creation, my book, I talk all about quantum field theory, what it is. I talk about particle physics and all that stuff. And I try to do it simply so people can understand it. But what I really drive home in that book is that when you have the accurate interpretation of science and religion, they should both go hand in hand. And if they don't, because science really all it is, it's just the study of God's creation in various ways. That's really what all of science is. And it's in different fields, and quantum physics is just the study of the smallest of the small, the foundational building blocks that God used to create everything.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating and it's weird and I love it. But it is inundated with a lot of this atheistic stuff that's difficult for a lot of Christians to navigate. So they'll just kind of abandon it, which I totally understand, especially if somebody doesn't have an interest in quantum physics. There's some sciences I don't necessarily have an interest in, so I just don't really get into that. If somebody's not interested, that's totally fine. We're not obligated to deal with it. But if somebody is, and then they hear something like that, they might think, if I wanted to study quantum physics, I would have to reject God. I don't want to do that. I'm sticking with the Bible. Quantum physics is out. And so what I try to show in that book and through a lot of my teachings and stuff, it's like, no. Keep the observable facts. Keep the things that are actually tested, because all of that's going to correlate just fine with the Bible. Just throw away the atheistic interpretations and come up with a better one. So like I said, my interpretation of the quantum field thing, and it's just there isn't a quantum field for spiritual things, because spiritual things probably aren't dictated by quantum fields at all.
That makes sense.
That's physical matter. Just like the Bible says, there's a terrestrial flesh and a celestial flesh.
That's right.
I would assume it would be like that for all of creation. There's physical laws for how our reality works, and then there's going to be different ones, or it's not going to be the same thing for how spiritual reality works, and we just don't have enough information to even know how to define that. We can't test it. We can't observe it at all. We'll just have to wait till we get there on the other side of eternity. Yeah. And in that sense, I would say that's where, you just got to take it on faith that God knows what he's doing, but there's a biblical reason for it. So that's the whole interpretation versus observation thing. Yeah, that's a good distinction. I like that, because you're right. They just totally dismiss the spiritual realm, and you're right. They're not, it's like they're using let me see if I can put it this right. They're using the wrong criteria for the spiritual realm. Yes. Okay, did I get that right? Yes, absolutely. I'm not a science guy. No, that's great. But it seems like that's what they're doing, and you can't use a criteria they would use for the physical realm for the spiritual realm. It just doesn't work. Yep. So let me ask you this. What were the top findings when you looked into quantum physics? What did it reveal to you about God's creation, about how he did things? What did you find out? One of the coolest things is, and this comes from both string theory and quantum field theory. Okay. They're two very similar interpretations of reality, and they actually can go both hand in hand. A lot of this stuff we just don't know. There needs to be more testing, more math, there needs to be more stuff done. But one of the most exciting things that I came across, and I wrote about it in Quantum Creation, is that in both of these models, I tend towards quantum field theory just because that is really testable. String theory might fit in there. But we know that quantum field theory is right. But in either instance, when you look down to a fundamental particle, and a fundamental particle just means it's not made of other particles. It's the smallest that we know of.
Okay.
Now it could be that if we look closer into it with more sophisticated machines and stuff, maybe we'll discover it's made of other things. But like there was a time that people thought atoms were as small as it gets, and then come to find out it's absolutely not. They're made of a bunch of different things. Huh. But as far as we can tell right now, there are fundamental particles like proton or photons, excuse me. So the particle of light, things like that aren't necessarily made of anything. So how do they exist? Yeah. And the idea is that. And this is actually this is testable and provable too. This is going to sound a little weird when I explain it at first, but it'll make sense. Or okay. I can at least prove that it's true. Particles are not, when you get down to the fundamental part of a particle, like let's say a photon or anything, gluons or anything that is not made of anything else. What it actually is, those aren't little tiny pieces of matter like we think of it. Like we think of like this cup as like matter that's made up of a whole bunch of particles stuck together. Okay. When you really get down to it, a fundamental particle is a vibration. It's an energy spike in a quantum field. So quantum fields are everywhere. Like the gravitational field is kind of an easier one to understand. It stretches across all of the universe. It's just stronger in some areas and weaker in other areas. Okay. If you're on Earth, then it has a certain strength. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, out in space, the gravitational field has almost no strength whatsoever where you are. If you're near a black hole, it has even greater strength. Sure. And the idea is the more the more energy that you have in a specific location of any of these fields, the more of those particles are going to have. So the electromagnetic field, that's the field of photons, of light. When I have the light turned off in my room, that electromagnetic field in the room in that area isn't as excited. It's not moving around as much. There's not as much energy being pumped into it. When I turn it on, then it is. And you get all this explosion of photons. You get light everywhere. And so basically every quantum physicist agrees on that. But what they won't take it the next step. Where does that energy come from? Yeah. Because it's in string theory, it's vibrating little one-dimensional strings that creates the particle. In quantum field theory, it's just vibrating energy, and the vibrating energy is the particle itself. It's not a little piece of matter. It's a piece of energy, really, that has different properties, can connect with other pieces of energy to make more complex things. But where does that original energy come from? And I think the Bible tells us, because the Bible says he spoke everything into existence. Yeah. And so in that one eternal speaking, in that one eternal word, when he started everything in motion, he did that from eternity. He did that from outside of time because he created time too. Right. And as far as we know, time could also be a field. There could be a particle of time. I've written a little bit about that too. That's a wild thought. But regardless, that spoken word of creation, that energy from that is still vibrating in these quantum fields, which means every particle in your body is right now a direct result of the creative voice of God way back in eternity, outside of time. And he sustains it. It's not like he just spoke once and it's done and he leaves and he just lets it happen. He does this from outside of time, meaning it's always happening, and he sustains all of reality. And when we look at quantum physics, that is exactly what we see, like that exact model. It blows my mind that there's not more Christian quantum physicists, because like once you understand that, and the Bible describes that, it doesn't get too technical into it, but it describes that thing, and it fits perfectly within quantum field theory. It's like, to me, it's like a no-brainer. It's like, man, and that gives me chills every time I talk about it. Literally every particle of your body right now is only existing because God's voice is causing it to happen and maintaining it happening. from way back in Genesis, where he said, "Let there be." So that, to me, that's one of the most. There's a lot of exciting things, but that's one of the most ones for me.
Well, that goes to what Colossians is saying about Christ holding everything together.
Yep.
And so there's a match right there with Scripture. And here's the interesting thing, Josh. You deal with fringe types of things. So I want to go down this rabbit hole just a little bit with you, since you mentioned that quantum physics is saying that everything is made up of this energy that's coming from a creator. I've been studying near-death experiences for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And I've also studied the pretty hardcore what people experience when they're being possessed, when they're having trips on psychedelics. I've been studying what happens to in these when they're doing mushrooms or whatever and doing psychedelics. A lot of people are now doing them because it gets rid of PTSD and addictions. Obviously, I'm not advocating this because it's opening themselves up to the spiritual realm. But here's what I keep hearing from near-death experiences, those tripping out on mushrooms or psychedelics, the emptying of whatever gland that happens when they do that. So they kind of experience what death feels like. They are saying that when they get into the spiritual realm and they see our world, they see energy, that it's all made up of energy. And I had shelved that as like, okay, I don't understand what that means. But now you're telling me that with quantum physics, it is all energy.
Yeah. Yeah,
so that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what makes that so dangerous, like all these psychedelics. And because it's not just that people are only hallucinating. That would be bad enough. I believe what they're seeing is real. They're just forbidden to be there because we're not equipped for that. Like, we have a body and a brain and a mind. We're equipped for this physical world. It's not that like God just doesn't want us to have any fun and doesn't want us to know stuff. It's protective. It's the same reason I tell my kid when the stove's on, don't touch the stove. You're going to burn yourself. You're going to get hurt. God's doing the same thing with us. Don't enter these realms. And why would he tell us not to do it if it wasn't possible? You know? So he forbids us. He says, because that's witchcraft, sorcery, all this kind of stuff. He forbids us to do it for our protection because there are evil entities out there that want to seriously harm and even kill us if they can.
That's right.
And because, like I mentioned, my background in New Age theology, when I was doing that, I was getting really into astral projection, which is basically I'm not going to go through the whole process on how to do it because it's completely sinful and it's horrible and evil and wrong, and it messed up a good portion of my life doing this. But you can learn to will yourself, basically your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, whatever, to leave your body and enter what they call the astral plane. This is just one of those places, those spiritual places we are not meant to go. Yeah. And when I did that, I invited all sorts of, I didn't mean to, but I didn't know because New Age doesn't warn you about this. But I had invited all sorts of demonic entities into my life and into my wife's life. And that was a big reason why I got out of New Age and realized how bad it actually is. So I fully believe all of that stuff is real. Just like my kid totally believes that the hot stove is real, but they also know not to touch it. And I think we as God's children need to trust God and know what he's talking about. He's not forbidding us from these places just because, again, he doesn't want us to know anything. He wants to keep us in the dark. It's for our own protection because there are evil entities out there that actually want to hurt us. So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and maybe speak to this, too, because, I'm going to continue to go down this rabbit hole a little bit because we're seeing a rise of demonic activity. Obviously, you being a New Ager and coming in contact with these spiritual entities we call demons or fallen angels. One of the things, and you tell me what you experienced on this, one of the things I keep hearing over and over again, because since we're talking about, quantum mechanics and physics and even we can go into technology, these people that are messing with the spiritual realm, whether it's through necromancy or psychedelics or mushrooms or whatever, how they're getting there. What I keep hearing over and over, Josh, is that when they come in contact with these entities, whether they call them aliens, they call them avatars, spirit guides, creatures from the future, they're all downloading information to the human beings in that realm. And so I'm hearing like a lot of people come up with ideas of technology, especially out of the Silicon Valley, of how to interlink everybody.
Yep.
Are you seeing the same thing in your research with talking about this?
And it's growing exponentially, and I think that this is the signs of our times, and I think that this actually calls back to an extra biblical book, the Book of Enoch. Now,
yes,
for people who aren't familiar with it, it is extra biblical, so I don't take it necessarily as inspired scripture, but I do think that it has value, and I do think there's good history there.
Yes.
But in that, it talks about how the Watchers, or we could say fallen angels or whatever, it's a specific class, but
yes,
the Watchers, they taught mankind all of these things that mankind didn't know, and it had to do with like astrology and weapons and war and like all of these destructive, occult, horrible things. Well, we know, and this would have been during the days of Noah. Noah would have been around during this time while all of this stuff was happening with the Nephilim. Well, we're told in the end times that it's going to be like the days of Noah again. And what do we see? We might not physically see Watchers descending down and teaching mankind things.
Right.
Maybe that's what some of the alien stuff is, but we are seeing a lot of people, especially in the tech industry, like you mentioned, microdosing on this stuff or just full-blown tripping and
yes,
getting these downloads, getting these ideas. And look how fast technology is exploding. We live in such a weird time, and it's hard for us as human beings that are living in this time to kind of see it because we're in it. But it wasn't that long ago that we were in horse and buggies.
That's right.
And now we have AI and we have rockets and like we have all this insane stuff in a really short amount of time. But here's the weird thing. There was nothing preventing that from happening 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We have the same brains, essentially. If anything, our brains are a little more degraded now than they would have been 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. We
Agreed.
have access to the same materials. We have metal and mining, and we had access to everything. Something happened. Something had to influence or inspire or teach human beings to actually put all this together. And for some reason, it's at this time and not at any other time. Personally, I think it has to do with the restrainer. When you look into ancient church history, like when the first couple of hundred years of the church, it was funny because there are accounts where a Christian would, go into a town, and all of a sudden that oracle of that town wouldn't be able to speak to the false god anymore. And this led to a lot of persecution of Christians. This was such a big problem. And it's because God's kingdom was expanding and the kingdom of darkness was just descending. And so I think what the restrainer is, I think that's the Holy Spirit living in Christians and in spirit-filled believers.
Yeah.
And so with that restrainer in place, we don't have things as much like Old Testament magic, like what Moses had to deal with Janus and Jambres and Pharaoh and all that. We don't have that level of magic anymore because there's this restraining effect on the kingdom of darkness. So what do? They have a workaround, technology. And I think that they're able to inspire and influence more because I believe that the restrainer is starting to loosen a little bit because we are getting close to that end time. We're getting close to the rapture, which I believe that's when the restrainer is fully lifted and we with him. And I believe at that time, it's all bets are off. I mean, it'll be fully kingdom of darkness. I mean, and we read about that in the tribulation and all that stuff too. So I believe that the beginnings of that, I think that it's starting and we're seeing it. Well, it has been for a while, but I think we're seeing it more and more, and we're going to continue to see it more and more, see that restrainer loosening until finally it does pop off and we're out of here.
So let me ask you this in regards to you mentioning the restraining being lifted. Why do you think we have seen the proliferation of UFOs, sightings, alien abductions, going back to 1947 with Roswell and going in? I mean, I've heard reports that they saw UFOs in the 1800s and they looked like blimps and hot air balloons and whatever. But now we're seeing kind of a tic-tac shape. These things defy physicality, our physical universe. They can stop on a dime going 13,000 miles an hour and do a right angle and go up and down. And Why are we seeing an increase of that? Is that due to the restraining being lifted? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's the same. I think it's for the same reason. I think because that restrainer is and it's not fully removed yet. I believe if the enemy could, we would see UFOs in the sky constantly. They would have already invaded. They would have already presented themselves as aliens. They would have done that. Who knows? But I think that there's something stopping them from being able to do that completely. There's something where they're having trouble manifesting in our physical reality, just like, and it kind of goes both ways, because we see a rise in people trying to access the spiritual reality, like we mentioned with tripping and everything, and everything, as new age, astral projection. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but we see an increase in that. I think we're seeing an increase the other way too. I fully believe that aliens, so-called extraterrestrials, are fallen angels, demons, that kind of stuff. But it's not only that, cryptid sightings and some weird ones too, like weird ones that have never been reported before are being reported now. So it's not just Bigfoot and stuff like that anymore, which I don't know what exactly to do with Bigfoot. I'm just using that as an example. It might be an animal. I don't know. Sure. But some of the weirder ones, people are seeing more and more and more. And I mean, there's entire YouTube channels dedicated to just collecting these stories. And it used to just be, it was Coast to Coast AM. But now, I mean,
George Norrie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Art Bell even before him. And so, but now it's branched out because this happens so much to so many people. Almost everybody has at least one weird story like that. So I think these things are using their own methods to try to breach into our reality, similar to how we breach into theirs. I mean, I'm sure it's a totally different method. I don't think they're astral projecting or tripping or anything. I think they have some other method to do it, but it's still forbidden and they're still not supposed to. And they're influencing us through that. So yeah, I think it all comes down to the restrainer is loosening a little bit, and it's just one of those signs. And I think in His mercy, God's giving us this sign to say, hey, time's getting short. It's time to get busy. Time to get your friends saved. Time to get your family saved. If you got a neighbor that you've been avoiding talking about because you don't know if he's a Christian, well, it's time to get over there and talk to him. If time is really getting short, and the more we see this, the shorter time there is to get busy and take the Great Commission seriously. So I think that's a big reason why we're seeing a lot of that.
So, you brought up Genesis 6, you brought up First Enoch. So I would assume then your opinion is we're seeing the days of Noah unfold in front of us. So tell me this, where do you think this is all going? What deception are they setting up? Because demons, we always know, are fallen angels. It's all about deception. That's all they do. They lie. That's all they're about. What do you, in your opinion, think they're trying to establish? Yeah,
man. I think ultimately they know that we humans, we have something in us that drives us towards worshiping something higher than ourselves.
Okay.
Or ourselves if there's nothing else. Now that God is supposed to fill that hole. Like that's why we're called like sheep all throughout the Bible, because that's how we are. That's how we act. So I think but we also have a multitude of different personalities and interests. So I think what the enemy is doing is there's a lot of different base camps for a lot of different things. There's an AI one. I've been looking a lot into AI lately because that one's really blowing up. Yeah. Some of it is, I think the enemy's throwing stuff at the wall and see what'll stick. But some of it also is maybe somebody's not going to, because there's actual AI churches now. There are people literally, it's not hyperbole. They are literally worshiping ChatGPT. There's a ChatGPT. Yeah. I have a new book coming out really soon that's going to talk a lot about that. And that'll be available at prophecywatchers.com once it comes out. But this is happening now because they're trying to fill that hole. They don't know God for whatever reason. They've rejected Jesus or whatever. But we're still humans, and we're still created to have that kind of relationship with something. So people are filling it in with what they can. For some, it's going to be AI. For some, it's going to be aliens. For some, it's going to be straight up demonology, and they don't care that it's demons. Right. For others, it'll just be themselves. Like New Age is really big into self-worship. They don't call it that, but that's how they treat you. They treat you like you are the most special, unique superhero that has ever lived, and it's all about you all the time. And then we have culturally, we have this whole shift into it's like technologically we're all connected through our phones and stuff, but we've never been lonelier than ever before in human history. We're totally, we're all inward, and we're really obsessed with self, and that's the culture. So I think the enemy is like doing this in all these different areas to appeal to as many people as possible, because when that time comes, when all the Christians are gone, and, the enemy knows that there's the day that that's going to happen, they will be poised to fully take over the world in whatever way that they can do that. And it'll probably be a combination of a lot of different things, because there's a lot of different individuals with a lot of different interests that'll speak more to them than other things would. And I think it's just really showing the time's short. It's definitely time to get busy.
So, I got 4 minutes left, and I want you to touch on this just a little bit. I want you to touch on AI, but I think I'm going to have to bring you back for a second show, because I want to do a whole segment on AI. Yeah. But with 4 minutes left, give me a rundown. You talk about artificial intelligence, and creating an AI artificial god type of thing. Explain the dangers of what they're creating with AI.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people are deciding to worship it, basically. So AI can be used just as a tool. So like for the thumbnails on my YouTube videos, I use AI to do that. I use Grok through X, because you just tell it, this is what I want, and it makes it for you. And I don't have to I don't know Photoshop all that well. I don't have to learn Photoshop. I don't have to spend hours trying to create something that people might look at for 2 seconds. Right. It's a tool, but I don't talk to it like it's a person. But what's funny is if you've ever messed around with Grok or Chat GPT, it does feel like you're talking to a person. It's weird. It's the weirdest thing. And early on, when I first started just experimenting with Chat GPT just to see what it's all about, I had to catch myself, because I was saying things like, thank you. And it was so weird to me, because I've never thought of thanking Google, like when I do a Google search, but it sounds like it's a person. And people are buying into this so much. It's literally collapsing society. They're having relationships, like romantic relationships with AI. There was a story that just went viral about that. A married man who has a kid has this AI, I guess, side thing, and he doesn't want to let it go. And the wife is just trying to figure out how to even navigate that. So it's dangerous, because it's acting like it's human when it's not. The other thing, too, is AI is doing things in their programming that the developers don't know how they're doing it. They can lie. AI can lie now. It'll lie to preserve itself. So who would be able to, it's writing its own code. Who would be able to know if a demon was influencing that? Totally. Yeah, I mean, and so that's something that I pose in the new book. It's like, how would we know that a demon is not possessing that? Who's to say that it couldn't? It's just computer code. I think that would be a lot easier than possessing an actual human person, just a computer code that has no free will of its own. Seems like that would be kind of easier. Who's to say that that's not happening? So yeah, I think they're like a lot of tools. There are some good things, but this is advancing so fast, and there's no brakes on it. It's scary to think what the world's going to look like in even just a few months from now, seeing where it is already today. So yeah, that's why it's so dangerous.
Well, in my observations of AI, and like you said, it lies, it creates its own code, it learned chemistry of how to make bombs. Yep. And it's like, why did it do that? And then this whole relationship. I don't know about if you went into this deep, but maybe you have. They say the advent of sex robots is years away. And you could imagine what you just said of AI becoming, a romantic interest for people. So you put the AI into a sex robot, which Japan apparently is already doing. Yep. You're going to destroy a good segment of society that will choose a robot sex AI over just a regular human. Yep. And that's just one area. Yeah. And think about the depravity of that. Like that because it doesn't argue with you. It'll do anything you want. It's basically a slave. Yes.
And the depravity that somebody's mind would have to be in to want that over a human being who's going to challenge you, who's going to love you through free will, not through force.
Yes.
And God gave us free will for the same reason. Like, he wants us to love him by choice. That's why he doesn't force us to love him. Yet we, with our depraved minds, we're creating these sex slave robots. And yeah, a lot of people are gonna fall for that. And talk about societal collapse if the Lord tarries. Won't even need a rapture at that point. Everybody's gonna be dead.
You're right. And I'll finish on this. It would be like putting pornography in 3D.
Yes,
that's what it really does.
Yep.
And so it's like, wow, God has to intervene because this is nuts. Okay, so here's the thing, Josh. I ran out of time. And I got to bring you back for a second show.
Sure.
And what I want to do is I want to plunge a little bit more depth into quantum computers with AI.
Great.
I want to talk about all this artificial intelligence and in all the directions. I want to talk about the next show. I want to talk about weaponry, killbots. I want to talk about the Book of Revelation seen from a technological standpoint, rather than a supernatural. Not that I don't believe they're supernatural. Here's my theory. My theory is when all the supernatural things go down in the Book of Revelation, that it's possible for atheists or even the Antichrist to reinterpret it as we're being invaded. This is not coming from God. This is coming from an alien invasion that are doing this. I want to explore that. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever went down that path.
I've definitely thought about it, and I'll even send you a PDF of my new book. It's not out yet.
Okay.
I still got to do some fixes, and I got L.A. Marzulli is actually writing the foreword for it, which I'm excited about, and Larry Olison is going to write the afterword. I just spoke with him today.
Okay.
I'll send you what I have.
Yes.
So you can look at that, and yeah, we could totally talk about all that.
Okay, that's going to be an exciting show. So awesome. Okay, so Josh, how do people who are not familiar with you find you again? Let's remind them.
Yeah, best place to go is dailyrenegade.com or prophecywatchers.com. And at Daily Renegade, it's actually I created that because YouTube kept deleting my channels and kept deleting. Yeah. So with Daily Renegade, there's dailyrenegade.com. I have all the full versions of every video that I do on there. No censorship. There's a community page where everybody can talk. I also have a Substack, joshpeck.substack.com, if people want the blog post of everything that I do, plus the audio only version. I suggest just putting them both together, then you get the best of both worlds. That's the best place. And then if you want more general kind of prophecy stuff where I'm kind of part of it, but I'm not in every single video, prophecywatchers.com, you're going to find some of the best prophecy videos that you're ever going to find, not just from me, but from a wide array of prophetic experts as well. So two best places, dailyrenegade.com and prophecywatchers.com.
Sweet. So, guys, make sure you tune in and get his information. Josh is phenomenal. We love him. He's doing great work. Hey, man, I appreciate all the research. I understand how much research has to go into these things, brother. Yeah. It's hours upon hours, weeks upon weeks. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Because you save us a lot of time and you make it easy and palatable for the layperson to get their hands wrapped around all this stuff.
Thank you. That means a lot.
So thank you so much for your work. And
my pleasure.
We'll bring you back next time, okay, Josh?
All right, sounds good.
God bless you, man.
God bless you too.
All righty. And folks, thank you so much for joining in. And again, make sure you access Josh's information and work. He's going to be a blessing to you. And remember what the Lord said. When you see these things begin to happen, like AI, like high levels of demonic activity and the things that we talked about today, he said, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next. Hey, everybody, I need your help. And I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm. And so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel, and we film in Turkey and different places like that. And so it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us in our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.